So we've already sort of gone over this in the last lecture, but I'm going to do a lecture specifically on accumulating totals to make it a little bit easier to find and to go through it again. So let's imagine our problem is we want our user to be able to enter test scores, and then we total and average those test scores. We could then use what we'd learned in previous chapters, like with if or decision statements, to assign a letter grade. So we'd begin by deciding what our variables are, and then we would do logic for this. And if I were to write out the logic for this, my logic would be we need to get num scores. And in logic, that tells me I'm getting it from the user. And then we would total, so we'll calculate total. And so that's going to be a variable that we're going to need. And then we will need to calculate average. That will be a variable that we need. Display total and average. And I typically like to have students pull out what the variables are, or you could just bold them or in some other way indicate them. So what would the variables be? We'd have num scores. We're getting that from the user. We would have total, which we're accumulating as we go. We have average, which will perform in an equation. So these are all the things I need to do in my program, and I would lay it out first to make sure I don't skip any steps. So then the program would actually look like this. So we're going to need to get num scores. So num scores is our variable. And I'm going to drop to the next line, but this will all be on the same line. And I'm only going to accept whole number input. So I'm going to do int input how many scores. And so now I've gotten our total for our range from our user, and we've converted it to an int, so I can now use it in a meaningful way. So now I can do for score, and 7 years ago, no, that's a joke, for score in range 1 through num scores. Then we're going to do things in here. Now we're going to need to have our total. So my total will be total equals 0, because we should initialize it before we use it. So we're going to, first we have to get an current test score. So we're going to just call it, we're going to do test equals int input enter test score. And we could, if we wanted to, use score 1, score 2, we could use it this way where it counted, and we could put it on the screen so we could use score and work through that. But I'm not going to. It's just enter the next test score. And then after that, we will accumulate it to the total. So we'll do total plus equals, which is the same as saying it's going to be total equal itself plus test. And so the value of total will change as we go through. And this will keep going until we hit the end of however many scores they put in. So that'll let us accumulate how many scores there are, and then we could use the num scores to calculate the average at the end and display that back to the user so that we could do the total divided by the number of scores to get average. So it's very common in for loops to do some sort of math or accumulate something in a variable while we're going along and getting input from the user.